These are prescient times. These are perilous times. What is my contribution? What is your contribution to creating a world that works? A world that works. Is that too much to ask for? Is that too much to ask for? A world that works. TNT monologue number 2, possibly. Let's see how this goes. These were the best of times. These were the worst of times. I think this is very apropos as well. These are perilous times. They're also prescient times. What is it that my contribution, what is my contribution towards altering the state of affairs as they have been represented through culture and civilization over thousands of years? I don't even know how long things have happened in our history. Certainly there has been stuff going on for a long time. I must imagine so. There isn't just like a cutoff and then we start off. Oh, who knows? Maybe we just get cut off, the flood happens, we start again. We live in perilous times, yes. I think most people that listen to my channel that are not the trolls and the attack dogs, whatever their purposes, I really don't really get it. I honestly, attack dogs, I don't get it. In terms of anything, a physical reality that you're trying to induce people to think about me, that I'm some scammer and I'm some sort of charlatan attempting to abscond with money and destroy people. How insane you are. There is no evidence in the history of my channel to suggest anything like that, no matter what you want to conjure. And if you keep harping on this thing, it's not going to go anywhere because there is no evidence for it. No matter what you try to do, and I thought about this morning, just a brief introduction to what it is that I want to talk about today, how this actually plays into something that I'm quite interested in, is how we keep ourselves within a framework of instability and largely inaction, and that is the aspect of a hate that is propagated, an anger and a hate that's propagated. So anyone that listens to me that has this element of, I guess the most obvious word would be hate, within their understanding of their own world, there is a problem here. There is a problem. Not to say that there aren't some very dark elements out there that exist around us that attempt to draw us in to this anger and hate about someone or something. And the reason these attack dogs come to my channel and put their few thumbs down is to propagate and instigate a feeling with those possibly coming and listening to what I have to say. My message is of how can I be of service and value to making the world work in some way other than it has worked for the past, because it hasn't worked. When I say work, it means that it actually propagates some sense of the ability to aspire and accomplish something that hasn't been done before. Or if it has been done before, let's repeat the good things. Let's repeat the good things. So all you attack dogs out there, you see, you're exposing yourselves by doing your little number. I'm just going to block you, obviously. I'll let you do what you do to show people what you're about. That's all. So, and I suppose I have a kind of affection for them even because it kind of gives me the message I'm on the right track. Like anyone that is functioning on this platform, if you're being attacked, you're most likely doing the right thing. So good for you. Keep on doing what you're doing. TNT monologue number 2. What I had said was in my first introduction that culture and civilization, people understand that have listened to me. I have a very low opinion of what is understood to be culture and civilization because fundamentally it has been propagated by a very specific, with specific intent to create destruction. Civilization and culture, if you look there, yes, you can find wonderful things in all cultures, people's behavior, how they behave towards each other. But these are fundamental notions of the world working. When we see culture in, let's say, for example, you have certain rituals that reinforce the best parts in us. This is not something I'm arguing against. But for the most part, the most fundamental aspect to culture and civilization is quite destructive in a historical context. If you look into history, that if you even what is recorded, most of history, in fact, it's something like over 6,000 years recorded history, we have been in a state of peace cumulatively for less than 260 years. Imagine this, people, that cumulatively, not just within a certain period of time, like 260 years of peace, no, the human being has been raging against each other in hate and anger and destruction for literally 95% of the time. There's something wrong here then. If we look at history and look at culture and civilization, which is the embodiment of what we understand to be history, there's something wrong. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So what's wrong? Well, hate is wrong. Hate is wrong. If I feel within myself this thing rising, it happens. I mean, to control this element, this emotion in us, is a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to do, to control this impulse. And the attack dogs come to reinforce this impulse. They want me to hate them. I don't hate them. I just see them for what they are. They're imbeciles who are caught up in this civilization and culture. So the next monologue, the culture that we're involved in, is basically what I had said. It's a position towards a kind of nihilism. It's something that the existentialists were very aware of, people like Camus or Dostoevsky, people that understood the world to be a treacherous place that subjected innocent souls to the destructive elements we had no way of mitigating. We were, in the sense, like children. We're all children. Somewhere deep down, we're all still children, having great anxiety and the inability to stand up to this nihilism that is presented to us. This is basically the existentialists. They revealed in their pessimism, in their sense of loss over this innocence. It's like, what was that story that Dostoevsky told, The Idiot? It's basically a loss of innocence that they recognized, and then we're kind of stuck. We're kind of stuck with having to deal with crumbs of this aspiration we may feel at any given time. And I paint paintings because I try to stay connected within myself to this sense of hope I have about something being different. And what can I contribute to this? What is it that I can contribute to this? That's what I'm talking about in this second monologue, in this TNT monologue. And I say quite often that the idea of creating a context, what does that mean when I say context? In my last video, I talked about creating context. And context essentially means for me that through my own experience, I reach an understanding. So if you have an idea about something, well, you can throw out anything. It's kind of maybe even as inspirational for somebody to absorb someone saying something, whatever that might be, or presenting us with some kind of image as in a painting and being excited about it. But in order for that image to really have an effect in my day-to-day life, it has to be experienced. It has to have a context. I have to understand. So as a painter, what I do, I basically chew through art history quite often, and I look at what other people have presented, and I chew through what it is that I experienced through my own work. This creates a context. It creates on some level an understanding of what it is that I can gather, that I can gain from someone else's experience. It becomes somewhat esoteric because this inner war or this inner recognition that happens when I make a painting is basically a way of creating a context for myself. And it's not always a linear event that I can say, well, this means this and that means that, and there's an equal sign behind something. It's not like this. A context literally is something that I incorporate within myself in my day-to-day life. And paintings, like I say, are a really good way for me to do that. There are other ways, many other ways. It's like your own deeds. If you have an idea about something and then they translate into your own deeds, that is creating context. So context is essential in determining truth. It's not just like all those truther channels and all those people out there, for the most part, complaining about someone else or someone. And I've said rightfully so, fine, yes, there is justification, but it's not going to create any change unless there's a context for that complaint. And how do you have context? Just by spouting on YouTube, doing a video and spouting off and that's context? No, it's not. It has to be translated in some real way into the world that I and you live in. That's context. The reason this has been able to be perpetrated against the general population, the idea of culture and civilization, is because people live without context. There is belief, there are dogmas that we attach ourselves to without having experienced any of that stuff for ourselves. I mean, I've said, why is it that people that are so-called religious, you know my feeling about the Roman Catholics, or any other kind of religious outfit that proclaims to know what is the mind of God. How is it that how is it that they know what God is thinking, what God wants us to think about and know? It's because they created the God that they know what he's thinking, she's thinking, whatever. There is no context here. It's just like thrown out. It's like throw some spitballs at the ceiling and see what sticks. And the more spitballs stick, the more benefit this culture, this meaningless, nihilistic culture, ends up having great advantage by us looking at the ceiling and saying, look at all those spitballs, those beliefs that are sticking up there. Isn't that fabulous? But there's no context, so it's meaningless. And then what happens as a result is we proceed on a path that is not our path, but we take it anyway. Comes back to calling. This is beautiful. The idea of a calling is something that has always motivated me in terms of my own thought process, that there are people that have a calling, that are really good at something, and then they're encouraged to pursue that path, and then before they die, we look at it and say, oh, that's fucking amazing what they accomplished, because they followed their path, whatever it was that they had to do. I'm going to end it with the idea that context is essential for us to be able to change in some way, because we have to internalize an experience in order to make it real. In my previous video, I just briefly touched on the idea that consciousness is directly related to uncertainty. And if you listen to that, I go into the idea of uncertainty. And what I feel this leads me to in this second monologue is that I'll put out three elements here. One is consciousness, one is existence, and one is eternity. These are all concepts that immediately stuff conjures. I'm sure that if your imagination is working, you're going to conjure up kind of images with this. But approach this in the most simple way possible. Okay, you have the idea of consciousness, you have existence, you have eternity. Concepts that are very important to me in terms of being able to process, being able to be part of something that I'm really not quite sure what it is, what I refer to as the mystery. So the idea that we can agree, existence, the tree is falling all the time, we're hearing it because there's consciousness. And consciousness is not complete without uncertainty, because the uncertainty part creates a context for us to be able to hear the tree fall, metaphorically speaking. So we have this reality, what, if you want to call it that, existence, which relies on consciousness and uncertainty. And then there's an introduction for me that is quite crucial to completing this triad, which is eternity. And this often is interpreted as kind of like the spirit lives on, you die, and then, you know, where does the body go? And every religion has this sort of elaborate system of stages that we go through, possibly. Artists, writers have tackled this. Dante tackled this. People that have notions of themselves, philosophers, tackle eternity. There is not a moment, even people like Bukowski, those types that, those brutal, those barbarians of our culture, that are actually quite high-minded because they, for me, invoke the idea of eternity, maybe not from the point of view of the fluffy, that sort of pillow marshmallow talk, but they try to get hard and heavy on this feeling. It's not like a sweet thing. It's probably more of an encounter that we have that is quite troublesome. This is the sort of Bukowski idea that our sense of eternity, if we're getting closer to it, find ourselves to be quite troubled on some level, which is fine. That's okay. But the way I'm evoking the third part in this, existence, consciousness, I don't know which comes first, maybe consciousness and then existence, and eternity, is that interplay that I am really interested in. This is something, and for which I try to create a context. I've opened this up now in my second monologue. I'm going to proceed toward some kind of a resolution. I'm introducing this idea because I brought it up before. I say I have a romance with eternity, and there's a good reason for that, because it extends my being, whatever this existence offers me, into an entirely larger realm. Now, I mean, if you think about yourself as an individual, as a human being existing on this earth, we see ourselves in large numbers in a very large area, relatively speaking. But I'm speaking psychologically, emotionally, mentally. Even the word spiritually is something that is evoked when I think about eternity. And eternity is, I'm speculating, obviously, but in my argument to create context, this speculation may actually affect my day-to-day life in a real way. This is what I'm going towards. This will be something that I will, as I proceed in these monologues, these TNT monologues, I will come back to, I will cross over. So here I have I'm establishing a position now of the three elements that are very crucial in my process going forward. I understand there is consciousness, existence, and this element of eternity. What does this mean to me? How do I create a context for having this awareness within me and not capitulating to people like the existential writers like Jean Genet or Sartre? These people capitulated to this anxiety of being aware of this and having lost their innocence and struggling like crazy to get back this feeling of being totally at ease with the notion of this idea. I'll end here, and what I'd like to, and this will be a beginning to the next segment, that I'll end here and I'll just say that as a clarification in terms of my own position as a YouTuber, that I don't want to complain. I do not want to be part of the complainers that are out there. There are certain ways of approaching this anxiety that I sense, I feel in other people, and to throw it out there, and it comes out as complaints. I feel myself needing to shift away from this sense of complaining about something and create a position that is actually viable for me. And I do not create a position through complaining or through being adversarial or being hateful. this doesn't work. I want to make this really clear. It's really important. I think that we begin to understand this, because there won't be a context. If we absorb this level of civilization, culture, and behavior as being the go-to behavior, we're not going to get anywhere. That's what I'm saying. And my contribution is, in some way or other, I'll even invoke, this is going to be another TNT monologue, the idea of beauty. The idea of beauty is integral to this notion of eternity, right? It's not like an ugly thing. It's like a beautiful thing that is evoked in me. So I'll get to this. I'll get to this as well. And as a synopsis, what I've talked about, what I feel today, is to begin to create a context outside of the hate and the anger part. And in order for us to be able to proceed with any kind of expectation of success, there are certain elements we need to drop, and the hate and the anger part needs to go in order to be able to absorb this marvelous triad of existence, of consciousness, and eternity. And I'm gonna noodle a bit more on this and bring this back in my next thinking process.